Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we are tackling something that I think almost everyone listening has struggled with at some point.
Oh, for sure.
And if you haven't, I am genuinely incredibly jealous of you.
Me too.
I'm talking about that universal, slightly painful experience of spending years in a classroom. You know, maybe it was high school Spanish, maybe college French,
Oh, you German on a whim?
German on a whim, and you put in the time. You
Yeah.
really did. You memorized the conjugation tables. You passed all the tests. You got the A's.
You had the flashcards, piles of them.
I had stacks of flashcards.
Fine.
I knew the difference between the preterite and the imperfect. I felt, pretty confident. And then the moment of truth arrives.
Right.
You finally land in the country. You walk into a little cafe in Paris or Madrid or Berlin. You step up to the counter to order a simple coffee, and you just freeze.
It is the classic deer in the headlights moment. It's a cliche for a reason.
It's worse than that. For me, it's like my brain completely reboots the blue screen of death. You open your mouth and just nothing comes out. Or if it does, it sounds like a robot reading from a dictionary. It's so incredibly frustrating.
It is.
And the question I always ask myself, and I think a lot of us ask, is, I spent 3 years studying this. I got an A in the class. Why can't I speak?
It's probably the most common frustration in all of language learning. And honestly, it's a completely valid question. But the answer isn't that you're bad at languages.
Okay, because that's what it feels like. It feels like a personal failing.
I get it, but it's not. The answer, which we're going to really explore today, is that there is a massive fundamental difference between learning a language in that academic sense and actually acquiring it.
Okay, so there's a real distinction there. Because to me, they've always sounded like the same thing. Learning, acquiring, what's the difference?
They sound similar, but neurologically in your brain, they're completely different processes.
Yeah.
And that's what this deep dive is about. This isn't about finding a magic pill or some, secret shortcut.
Right, learn Italian in 3 weeks while you sleep.
Exactly. We're not selling that. We are going to strip away the textbooks for a bit and look at the cognitive science, the actual biology of how the human brain encodes a new language.
So we're looking under the hood at the engine.
Exactly. We're going to look at how a second language physically alters the structure of your brain, because it does, measurably.
Wow.
We'll break down that difference between school learning versus real-life acquisition. And then we're going to get into some very practical science-backed techniques, things with names like shadowing and interleaving and active recall.
And the part I'm most interested in, why feeling like an absolute fool when you start out, is actually a biological necessity.
It absolutely is. It's a non-negotiable part of the process.
Right.
If you aren't willing to look silly, you're basically fighting your own biology.
Right, well, I'm great at looking silly, so I should be fluent by now.
Oh, there you go.
But before we get to the techniques, let's start with the hardware. Because I think a lot of us view language as just software we upload, You memorize the words, you know the grammar rules, and then you just run the program. But the research suggests it's much deeper than that, right? It's not just software.
It's so much deeper. We have to stop thinking of language learning as just, memorizing a list of state capitals or your multiplication tables. It is a full-body workout for the brain.
A full-body workout.
It is. And to understand that, we need to talk about neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. I hear that word thrown around a lot. It basically just means the brain can change itself.
Precisely. For a very long time, scientists thought the adult brain was like concrete. Once you hit a certain age, maybe 25 or so, it's set, and that was it. You had what you had. Fixed. But we know now that that's just not true. The brain is plastic, it's malleable, it physically changes based on what you do with it.
Yeah.
And learning a second language is one of the most intense, complex, and beneficial workouts you can give it.
So what is actually happening physically, like on a cellular level? Is my brain growing?
In a way, yes. Let's use an analogy. Imagine your brain is a city.
Okay, I'm picturing a city map. Lots of streets.
Right. If you are monolingual, you only speak one language, your brain has a very efficient set of highways to get from point A to point B.
Okay.
Let's say you see a dog. Your brain has one superhighway that connects the image of that animal to the word dog. It works, it's fast, it's paved, you don't even think about it.
Simple, efficient,
Yeah,
automatic.
exactly. But when you start learning a second language, say Spanish, you aren't just adding a new car to that existing road. You are forcing the city to build entirely new infrastructure.
Whole new road.
They have to build a new road that connects that same image of the animal to the word perro. But it's more than that, and this is the crucial part. You have to build an interchange.
An interchange?
A complex interchange so you can switch between dog and perro depending on who you were talking to. You need to manage the traffic.
So it's not just about storage, it's about traffic management. That's the real workout.
That's the workout. And that construction work, building those new roads and interchanges, physically increases the density of the gray matter in your brain.
Wait, really? You can see this?
You can see it on an MRI. There have been studies where they took recruits at military interpreter academies. These are people studying languages intensely, 7 days a week, and scan their brains before and after the course.
And what did they find?
Their brains literally got bigger, specifically in the hippocampus, which handles learning and memory, and in parts of the cerebral cortex.
That is incredible.
And they had a control group. They compared them to, say, medical students who were studying just as hard, just as many hours, but learning facts in their native language.
In their brains.
Their brain structure didn't change size. The act of learning the language itself, of building that new network, was what caused the physical growth.
So that headache I get when I try to speak French for an hour, that's not just frustration, that's growing pains.
It's the feeling of your brain laying down new asphalt. It's a good sign. And there's a specific part of the brain that gets a major workout. It's called the anterior cingulate cortex.
They asked me, say that again?
The anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC. Think of it as the brain's main traffic controller, or an air traffic controller at a busy airport.
Okay, so it's managing everything.
It's responsible for attention, for conflict monitoring, for switching between tasks. When you are bilingual, or even just learning, you are constantly suppressing one language to speak the other.
Right, because if I'm trying to speak Spanish, I have to actively stop my brain from just saying the English word that wants to pop out.
Exactly. Your brain is always managing traffic, ensuring the Spanish word doesn't slip out when you're speaking English, and vice versa. That constant effort, that constant switching, strengthens that traffic controller immensely.
So it's like doing bicep curls for your attention span.
That's a great way to put it. It really is.
So does this spill over into the rest of my life? I mean, if I get better at Spanish, am I also better at, I don't know, ignoring distractions at work or focusing on a hard problem?
The evidence strongly suggests yes. This leads to what scientists call executive control. Bilinguals, on average, often outperform monolinguals in tasks that require filtering out distractions or switching focus quickly. They're just more practiced at it.
Okay, that's a pretty big benefit right there.
But here's where it gets really fascinating, and this is the cognitive reserve concept.
I saw this in the notes and I wanted to ask about it. It sounded like language learning is almost like a 401k for your brain.
That's a perfect analogy. It's a savings account for your cognitive health. We know that as we age, the brain naturally deteriorates. We lose connections. It happens to everyone.
It's an unfortunate part of life.
It is. But the research shows that people who speak 2 or more languages often show the symptoms of dementia or Alzheimer's years later than monolinguals.
Years later? Like how many years are we talking about?
On average, about 4 to 5 years later. Now, I want to be very, very clear here because this is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean you don't get the disease.
Right. It's not a cure. It's not a magic bullet.
It is not a cure. Physically, if you were to look at the brain, the plaques and tangles associated with Alzheimer's might still be there. The damage might be identical to a monolingual person's brain.
So the hardware is damaged either way.
Yes. But, and this goes right back to our city analogy, because the bilingual brain has built all those extra roads and interchanges and back alleys, it can detour around the damage.
Wow. That is incredible. So the bridge is out on the main highway, but the bilingual brain says, no problem, I know a back road through the neighborhood to get where I'm going.
Exactly. The monolingual brain might only have that one main highway, so if that road is blocked by the disease, function is lost much more quickly. The bilingual brain keeps functioning longer because it has a more complex, resilient network.
It just has more options.
More options. So when we talk about learning a language, yes, it's about ordering tapas in Spain, which is great, but it's also about building a more resilient, more powerful brain that lasts longer.
That's a huge why. For anyone listening who's on the fence, it's not just about travel, it's about long-term brain health.
It really is.
Okay, so you've convinced me. My brain needs this workout. But let's move to the practical side. Because even if I want that resilient brain, the process is usually miserable. You mentioned earlier the difference between learning and acquisition. Can we unpack that? Because I think that's where my high school Spanish went completely off the rails.
This is the golden rule. Honestly, if you take one thing away from this whole deep dive, let it be this distinction. There are 2 separate, distinct systems in your brain for handling language. We can call them System 1 and System 2, or simply learning versus acquisition.
Okay, so learning is what I did in school. That's the flashcards and the grammar charts.
Yes. Learning is a conscious, rule-based process. It's explicit. You are actively memorizing grammar tables. You are learning about the language.
Right.
You know that the verb changes because it's the past tense third-person plural. It is highly analytical.
It's like studying the physics of a bicycle.
That is a perfect analogy. It really is. You can sit in a classroom and study the physics of balance. You can calculate the centrifugal force. You can memorize every single part of the bike, the chain, the gears, the spokes.
I could ace a written test on how to ride a bike.
With a perfect score.
Yeah.
But does any of that mean you can actually write it?
Absolutely not. I'd get on and immediately fall flat on my face.
That is learning. You have the theory, but you don't have the skill. Now, acquisition is the subconscious process. It's what happens when you actually get on the bike and wobble around.
The trial and error.
Yes. You aren't thinking about the physics. You're just feeling the balance. Your body is making thousands of tiny micro adjustments without you consciously telling it to. It's meaning-focused, not rule-focused. You just want to stay upright and move forward.
And that's how we learned our first language, right? As kids.
Exactly. No one sat you down at 2 years old and explained the difference between a subject and an object.
Thank goodness.
You didn't study flashcards of mommy and daddy. You were just immersed in thousands and thousands of hours of meaningful input, and your brain's incredible pattern recognition machine did the rest. You acquired English. You didn't learn it in a classroom.
So the problem is, as adults, we come back to language, and we try to use the learning system to do the acquisition system's job.
We do. And that leads to a very specific, very frustrating problem. We call it the monitor.
The monitor. This sounds like a villain in a sci-fi movie.
For a language learner, it kind of is.
Mm.
The monitor is this little editor that lives in your head.
Yeah.
And it is built entirely by learning.
So all those grammar rules I memorized
Are the code that you use to program your monitor. So
Yeah.
when you try to speak, the monitor jumps in and says, wait, stop. Is that the right conjugation? Is that the masculine or feminine article? Did you use the right preposition? Hold on, let me check the rule book.
Oh my God, yes. That is exactly what happens in my head. I'm about to say something simple like, the car is red, and my brain just screams, wait, car is kosh, but is kosh masculine or feminine? It ends in E. I don't remember the rule. If it's feminine, the adjective is roja. If it's masculine, it's ro.
And while you're having that frantic internal debate, what is happening in the real world?
The waiter is staring at me like I've lost my mind, or he just gets tired of waiting and switches to English to put me out of my misery.
Exactly. The monitor causes paralysis. It's useful for writing, maybe, where you have time to go back and edit and use the backspace key. But for real-time speaking, it is a complete disaster.
It's too slow.
Way too slow. You cannot spell check yourself in real time and maintain a conversation. The goal of fluency is to shrink the monitor, to tell it to sit down and be quiet, and to trust the acquisition system.
But that's terrifying because the acquisition system feels messy. It feels like guessing. If I don't check the rules, won't I just sound like an idiot?
You might make mistakes, yes. Of course you will. But you will be communicating. And here's the thing. You cannot force the learning system to become the acquisition system just by studying harder. It doesn't work that way. There is a biological reality here called the natural order.
The natural order. What does that mean?
It means that research shows that humans acquire language structures in a specific, predictable sequence, regardless of what the textbook says or what order you study them in.
So the curriculum doesn't matter.
Not to your brain's acquisition system, no. For example, in English, we usually acquire the ing ending on verbs, like walking, very early on. But the third-person S, like he walks, comes much, much later.
Even if you teach them at the same time in Chapter 2.
Even if you drill the S ending for hours and hours. If your brain isn't ready for it in the natural order, it won't stick in your spontaneous speech. You might get it right on a worksheet, but it won't come out of your mouth in a conversation.
It's like you can't force it. You can't. You can't force your brain to master complex grammar before it has acquired the basics. Just like you can't teach a baby to run before they've learned to walk.
That is actually incredibly relieving, because I used to beat myself up when I kept making the same simple mistake over and over. I thought I was just stupid.
You aren't stupid. Your brain just hasn't gotten to that step in its internal syllabus yet. It's not a failure, it's just a timing issue. And this brings us to another huge concept, the silent period.
The silent period, is this what it sounds like, just not talking?
In a way, yes. Think about a baby again. They are born, and what do? They listen.
For a long time.
For a year, maybe 2 years, before they really start producing complex sentences. They're just absorbing data. They're filling the tank. But as adults, we take a Spanish class on Tuesday, and we expect to be having deep philosophical conversations by Friday.
And when we can't, we panic and think we're failing. But you shouldn't panic. There is a very common phenomenon where beginners can understand a lot more than they can say. That is completely normal. Your brain is building the network, laying the foundation.
So what's the advice here?
The actionable advice is, don't force production too early.
Wait, hold on. That sounds completely counterintuitive. If I want to learn tennis, I have to hit the ball. If I want to speak Spanish, don't I have to speak? If I just listen for 6 months, won't I just be really good at listening and still terrible at talking?
That's a great question. And it's a common concern. You do need to speak eventually.
Yeah.
Of course. But in the very beginning, if you force yourself to speak before you have enough data in your brain, all you are doing is relying on your slow, clumsy monitor.
Okay.
You're just translating word for word from English in your head. You aren't actually speaking Spanish. You're speaking English with Spanish words. And all that does is build anxiety and reinforce bad habits.
So I need to fill the tank before I even try to drive the car.
Exactly. You need input.
Yeah.
Massive amounts of input.
Okay, let's talk about input. Because I see this term, comprehensible input, everywhere in the language learning community online. It's treated like the Holy Grail. But what does it actually mean? Does it mean I just put on a French movie and fall asleep and learn through osmosis?
No. That is such a common mistake. The brain only acquires language when it understands the message. If I play you a podcast in Hungarian right now, and I'm assuming you know zero Hungarian.
I know zero Hungarian.
It is just noise. It's static.
Yeah.
Your brain has no hooks, no way to latch onto anything, so it just filters it out as irrelevant. You will learn absolutely nothing.
It's just white noise to my brain.
Right. But if I show you a picture of a cat, point to it, and say the word for cat in Hungarian, now you have a connection. That is input. But for it to be effective for acquisition, it needs to be what researchers call I+1.
I+1. Okay, it sounds like a math formula. Break it down.
It's a very simple but powerful concept. The I stands for your current level. It's what you already know. The +1 is just a tiny bit beyond that, a little bit of challenge.
Going back to the gym analogy, it's progressive overload. Not too heavy, not too light.
It's exactly that. If you go to the gym and lift a feather all day, you get no muscle growth. That's I-1. It's too easy. You're bored.
Nothing happens.
But if you try to bench press 300 pounds on your first day, you get crushed. It's I+10. You learn nothing because you're completely overwhelmed and probably injured.
Right.
You need that sweet spot. For language, that means input, where you understand the general context, you get the gist of the story, but there are a few new words or structures you have to guess at from the context.
So I shouldn't be aiming for 100% understanding of what I hear or read.
Absolutely not. If you understand 100%, you aren't learning anything new. You're just reviewing. And if you understand only 5%, you are just lost and frustrated. You want to be in that, say, 80–95% comprehension zone.
Because that gap is where the learning happens.
That struggle, that tiny gap where your brain has to say, wait, I know he's talking about a car.
Yeah.
And he said it's rojo, and he seems happy about it.
Yeah.
So rojo probably means a color. Maybe it's red. That little act of deduction is where the wiring happens. That's acquisition in action.
So we need to flood our brains with this I+1 input. But how do we do that if we aren't living in the country? Because I can't just walk out my door and hear I+1 Spanish being spoken all around me.
You have to create your own immersion bubble. And thankfully, we live in the age of the internet, which makes this easier than ever. You can listen 24/7. But the real trick is utilizing what I call dead time.
Dead time, like wasted time.
Exactly. Your commute, washing the dishes, folding laundry, walking the dog. Most people treat this as silence time, or they listen to music they already know. But if you want to acquire a language, this is your gold mine.
So fill that time with a podcast or an audiobook in the target language.
Yes, flood the brain with the sounds, the rhythm, the intonation. And it's okay if you aren't focusing 100% of the time. Even if you drift in and out, your subconscious is still picking up the patterns.
Okay, so audio is huge. But what about reading? Because the research you sent over made a really interesting distinction between being a detective and being a surfer. And I'm pretty sure I've been doing it wrong my whole life.
Most people do it wrong because school only teaches us one way. There are two essential ways to read. The first is intensive reading, and that's the detective.
Okay, so I'm putting on my trench coat. I have my magnifying glass.
That's the mindset. You take a very short text, maybe one paragraph or one page, and it's hard. It's above your level. You look up every single word you don't know, you dissect the grammar, you analyze why that sentence is structured that way.
That's the learning system again. It's very analytical.
Yes. And it's valuable. I don't want to dismiss it. It builds your toolbox. It shows you how the engine of the language works. But you can't only do that.
Why not? It feels very productive.
Because if you stop every 3 words to look something up in a dictionary, you never get any flow. You never experience the story. That's why you also need extensive reading. The surfer.
And the rule for the surfer is no dictionaries allowed.
The rule is no dictionaries unless you are absolutely lost without a specific word. You pick a long text, maybe a graded reader, a comic book, a novel you already know in English, something slightly below or at your comfortable level, and you just go. You read for pleasure.
That sounds terrifying for a perfectionist like me.
Yeah.
If I see a word I don't know, it bothers me. I feel like I'm missing something important.
You have to learn to let it go. You have to ride the wave of the story. If you don't understand a word, you use context to guess what it might mean, and you just keep moving. The goal isn't deep analysis. The goal is volume and enjoyment.
So this is more about getting a feel for the language in motion.
Exactly. Extensive reading builds fluency and speed. It teaches your brain to process the language in real time without the monitor stopping you every 2 seconds to check a rule. It's how you make the language automatic.
So we need both. We need the detective to understand the mechanics and the surfer to learn how to actually move through the water.
Balance is key. If you only surf, you might develop bad habits or miss some important nuance. If you only act as a detective, you'll know a lot about the language, but you'll never get fast or enjoy it.
Okay, so we are flooding the brain with input. We are listening while we do chores. We are reading like a surfer and a detective. But here is my issue. I have definitely learned a list of words on Monday, felt great about it, and then completely forgotten every single one by Tuesday. This brings us to section 4, the processing phase. How do we make it all stick?
Ah, yes. The great nemesis of every student, the forgetting curve.
It sounds ominous and it feels ominous.
It's a biological reality. The human brain is actually designed to forget. It's a survival mechanism. If you remembered every single license plate you saw on the way to work this morning, your brain would crash. It has to delete information it deems irrelevant.
So if I learn a new word and I don't use it or see it again right away, my brain just throws it in the trash bin.
Pretty much. Within 24 hours, you can lose something like 70% of new information if you don't review it. The curve is steep.
So how do we hack that? Because I don't want to study the same list of 50 words every single day for the rest of my life. That sounds absolutely miserable.
The solution, and it's an incredibly powerful one, is spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition.
Imagine you plant a flower. You don't dump 5 gallons of water on it once a year and hope for the best.
No, it would die.
Right. You water it a little bit, then you wait until the soil is almost dry, and then you water it again. Spaced repetition is the act of watering the memory right before it wilts.
So the idea is to review the word at the exact moment I'm about to forget it. That seems hard to time.
It used to be. You'd have to use complicated flashcard systems. But now there are algorithms for this, apps like Anki or other digital flashcard programs. They manage the schedule for you.
How does that work?
It's simple. You see a word. If you know it easily, you tell the app, and it won't show it to you again for, say, a month. If you struggle with it, the app shows to you again tomorrow, or even in 10 minutes.
So it's incredibly efficient.
It's the most efficient way to study. It means you aren't wasting precious time studying words you already know cold. You are only focusing on your personal weak points. But, and this is a big but, the review itself has to be active. This is the concept of active recall.
And this is the no peeking rule.
That's it. Passive review is what most of us do by default. They look at their notes, they read the Spanish word, they read the English definition right next to it, and they nod. They say, oh yeah, of course I know that one.
It feels familiar, so you trick yourself into thinking you know it?
But that is an illusion of competence. Recognition is not the same as recall. Active recall is when you look at the English word and you have nothing else. You have to force your brain to reach into the archives and retrieve the Spanish word from scratch.
It's that split second of struggle, that really uncomfortable, it's on the tip of my tongue feeling.
That struggle is the learning. That specific moment of frustration where your brain is searching for the neural pathway is the moment when that pathway gets reinforced and myelinated. It's like lifting a heavy weight. If it's easy, you aren't getting stronger.
So the discomfort is a good sign.
It's the best sign. The data on this is stunning. Retention goes from something like 30 or 40% with passive reading up to 80 or 90% with active recall. You have to sweat a little bit mentally.
I love the workout analogies today. They really click. So we have spaced repetition and active recall. But then there was this other term in the research, interleaving. This one was totally new to me. It sounds like weaving or something.
In a way, it is. It's about mixing up your practice. The traditional way to study, the way we all did it in school, is blocking.
Blocking.
You say, okay, today is food day. For the next hour, I'm going to study only food vocabulary. Or, this hour is only for past tense verbs.
That sounds very organized and logical. I love a good theme for my study session.
It feels productive, and it looks good on a schedule. But it's actually less effective for long-term retention than a messier approach. Interleaving is when you mix different types of problems or words all in one session.
So I do a food word, then a travel word, then a quick grammar problem, then a listening exercise, all jumbled up.
Exactly.
Why on earth would making it messier be better?
Let's go back to sports. Think about a tennis player. If a player practices just their forehand for an hour straight with blocked practice, they get into a nice groove, they look great.
Yeah.
They're hitting it perfectly every time.
Right.
But in a real game, does the ball come to their forehand 50 times in a row?
Never. It's forehand, backhand, volley, you have to run to the net, a lob. It's random.
It's completely random. If you only practice forehands, you aren't learning the crucial skill of reading the ball and switching your stance. You aren't learning to discriminate between shots.
Okay, I see.
Interleaving forces your brain to constantly reload the program. You can't get into a comfortable groove. You have to switch from a noun to a verb, from a food word to a travel word. That constant switching strengthens the neural connections much more than repetitive grooving.
So it feels harder during the study session itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will get more answers wrong during an interleaved session. It will feel less productive, but you will remember much, much more next week, and that's what matters.
It seems like a consistent theme here is that the methods that feel harder, active recall, interleaving, are actually the ones that work best. The stuff that feels easy and comfortable, like rereading your notes or blocked study, is kind of an illusion.
That is a profound insight. That's exactly right. Learning should feel a bit difficult. If it feels too easy, you're probably just cruising on a highway you already built instead of building a new one.
Before we move on to the terrifying part, which is output, I want to touch on one more detail from the research about vocabulary. It was called the 3 tiers of a word, because I think I usually stop at tier 1. I learn gato equals cat, and I check it off my list and move on.
And that's what most people do. We think knowing a word is binary. Either I know it or I don't.
Yeah.
But real, deep knowledge has layers. Tier 1 is exactly what you said, meaning the translation, gato, means cat. That's the basics.
Okay, what's tier 2?
Tier 2 is form. What does the word look like? How do you spell it? What does it sound like? How do you pronounce it? Does it rhyme with another word? It's the physical properties of the word itself.
And tier 3?
Tier 3 is use. And this is the deep end. This is where fluency lives. How is this word actually used in context? What other words does it like to hang out with?
Hang out with, like the word has friends.
Yes. In linguistics, we call them collocations. These are words that just naturally go together in a language. For example, in English, we say heavy rain. We do not say strong rain or powerful rain.
Right, strong rain just sounds weird, even though it makes logical sense.
It makes perfect logical sense. But if you say it, a native speaker immediately knows you're not a native speaker. Or we say fast food, not quick food.
They mean the same thing, but quick food is just wrong.
Exactly. To really know a word, you need to study its collocations. Don't just memorize the translation in isolation. Look at the spelling, listen to the sound, and, most importantly, find it in a real sentence. See who its neighbors are.
So it's about learning phrases, not just words.
Phrases and patterns. That's the key.
Okay, so we've rewired our brain, we've flooded it with comprehensible input, we've locked that knowledge in with spaced repetition and interleaving. Now, the scary part. We have to actually open our mouths. Section 5, the output phase.
The output phase is tricky because, as we said, you don't want to force it too early and rely on that clumsy monitor. But when you are ready to start practicing, there is a technique that is essentially the gym for your mouth. It's called shadowing.
I tried this after reading the notes, and I have to admit, I felt absolutely ridiculous doing it. It is much harder than it looks. Walk us through it.
Shadowing is all about bridging that gap between listening and speaking. The method is simple in theory, but very intense in practice. You play an audio clip of a native speaker, and you repeat exactly what they say, almost simultaneously.
So you're a split second behind them, like a shadow.
Precisely. The key is that you're not pausing the audio. You don't listen, pause, repeat.
You're speaking the current word while you are hearing the next word.
Yes.
That feels like trying to pat your head and rub your stomach at the same time, but with your mouth and ears.
It creates what some people call a split brain challenge. Your brain is forced to process the input, understand the meaning, and coordinate the complex motor functions of your mouth all at the exact same time.
And it forces you to stop translating?
It has to. You simply don't have time to translate in your head. If you stop to think about grammar or search for a word, the audio leaves you behind in the dust. You have to go with the flow.
And the notes mentioned you shouldn't just mumble it under your breath. You have to be dramatic.
Yes. This is so important. Do not be a zombie. If the speaker in the audio is angry, you sound angry. If they pitch their voice up at the end of a question, you pitch yours up. You mimic the emotion, the speed, the rhythm. You are an actor performing a role.
Why does the acting part of it matter so much?
Because language isn't just a string of words, it's music. It has melody and rhythm, what we call prosody. By mimicking the emotion, you help your brain own the language. It stops being a math problem you're solving and starts being a form of human expression.
And it probably helps with memory too, right? Emotionally charged events stick with us.
Exactly right. You remember things better when there is emotion attached. It's about learning the patterns again, isn't it? Not the abstract rules.
It all comes back to patterns over rules.
The brain is a pattern recognition machine, not a rule-following machine. When you shadow or when you learn phrases, you are learning chunks. Yes. Think about how you speak English. When you say, I am looking for my keys, you don't consciously think. Subject I, verb to be, present participle looking, preposition for.
No, of course not. It just comes out as one unit.
It comes out as one giant block of sound. I am looking for, that's a chunk.
And that's so much more efficient for the brain.
It's how native speakers talk. We don't assemble sentences word by word from a dictionary. We assemble them chunk by chunk from a library of patterns we've acquired. Shadowing drills those chunks into your muscle memory so they come out automatically, without thinking.
Now, there is one more biological hack in this section that I love because it involves doing absolutely nothing. Sleep.
The ultimate and most underrated study tool. We often think of sleep as downtime or the brain shutting off. But neurologically, sleep is when the save button is pressed.
So all the studying I do today doesn't actually get stored properly until I sleep tonight.
For the most part, yes. During deep sleep, your brain takes all that I+1 input, all that struggle from your active recall sessions, and it organizes it. It's like a librarian filing the books away. It moves data from fragile short-term memory to robust long-term memory. It literally consolidates and strengthens the new neural connections you built during the day.
So studying right before bed might actually be a powerful strategy.
The research suggests it can be very effective. Study your vocabulary, do some shadowing for 15 minutes, then go to sleep. Let your brain save the file without any interference from watching TV or work stress.
We have covered so much ground here, but I think we have to address the elephant in the room. Section 6. Overcoming the barriers. Because you can have all these amazing techniques, shadowing, spaced repetition, comprehensible input, but if you are terrified to speak, none of it matters.
This brings us to a really important concept called the affective filter. It was a concept developed by the linguist Stephen Krashen, who also gave us I+1.
The affective filter.
Imagine there's a wall or a shield between the outside world and your brain's language acquisition center.
Okay, I'm picturing a wall.
When you are relaxed, happy, motivated, and curious, the wall is down. The input comes in, it hits the language acquisition device in your brain, and you learn. But if you are anxious, stressed, bored, or, and this is the big one, afraid of looking stupid, the affective filter goes up. The wall rises.
And the input just bounces off the wall.
It literally blocks the input from getting in. You can be sitting in an immersion class for 3 hours, but if you are terrified of the teacher calling on you, you are probably not acquiring very much. You're just in survival mode. Your brain isn't focused on learn Spanish. It's focused on don't get humiliated.
It explains so much about my high school French class. I wasn't learning. I was just trying not to get yelled at for my accent.
Exactly. Stress makes us stupid. That's a biological fact. When you're stressed, your brain diverts resources away from higher-level processing and into fight or flight. So feeling safe and relaxed is actually a biological requirement for effective learning.
So how do we lower the filter? Because speaking a new language is inherently stressful. You feel like a toddler again.
You have to fundamentally reframe mistakes. We are trained from a young age in school that mistakes are failures. A red check mark on your paper is bad. I messed up the verb conjugation. I am bad at this.
Right, it's a judgment on your ability.
But in language acquisition, mistakes are just data points. That's all they are.
Data points. I like that reframe. It takes the emotion out of it.
It does. Think about the baby again. When a toddler points at a dog and says cat, does the parent scold the baby? Do they give the baby an F in English? Do they say, you are terrible at this, maybe you should just give up?
No, of course not. They just smile and say, no, sweetie, that's a dog. See? Doggy.
Exactly. They focus on the meaning, not the form. They gently correct, and the baby's brain just says, okay, noted. 4 legs, fur, barks. That's a dog, not a cat. It updates the algorithm.
And there's no shame involved.
Zero shame. As adults, we need to grant ourselves that same grace. You have to be willing to sound like a toddler for a while. It's a necessary stage.
So if I'm not making any mistakes, I'm probably not learning. Is that a fair way to look at it?
That is a perfect way to look at it. If you aren't making mistakes, you aren't stretching to that I+1 level. You're playing it safe in the I zone where it's comfortable. You need to be willing to be imperfect. Find low-stakes environments to practice.
Like what?
Talk to yourself in the shower. Narrate what you're doing. Talk to your dog or your cat.
My dog is an excellent listener. He never once corrects my Spanish grammar.
That makes him the perfect language partner. The goal is to get comfortable with the physical act of speaking, of making the sounds, without the fear of judgment. Lower that filter, and the acquisition will happen naturally.
That is such a powerful reframe. We've gone all the way from the biology of the bilingual brain building those complex city maps inside our skulls to the huge distinction between learning the rules and acquisition, the feeling. We talked about feeding the brain with comprehensible input, processing it with spaced repetition and active recall, and then finally outputting it through techniques like shadowing.
And tying it all together with the emotional side keeping that effective filter low and learning to embrace the messiness of it all.
So what does this all mean for the person listening right now who feels stuck? The person who has been using the app for 6 months and still feels like they can't say anything coherent.
It means that language isn't a list of facts you memorize from a book. It's a skill you practice, like playing an instrument or learning a sport.
Yeah.
You can't memorize your way to being a good piano player. You have to put your hands on the keys and play.
And you can't memorize your way to fluency.
You have to engage with the language.
Yeah.
You have to listen, read, and eventually speak.
And realizing that those moments of struggle, that tip of the tongue feeling, the mental fatigue after listening to a podcast for an hour, that's not a sign of failure. That's the gym workout. That's the brain-building muscle.
Exactly. The frustration is the sign that it's working. If it were easy, you wouldn't be growing.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought that really stuck with me from the research. We talked about the silent period. If you are listening to this and you feel like you've been studying for months and you still can't speak well, consider this provocative thought. Maybe you aren't stuck.
Right.
Maybe your brain is simply in its silent period. It's gathering data. It's building the network. It's laying the foundation for the skyscrapers to come. You aren't failing. You are just in the necessary phase of silent acquisition.
The breakthrough often comes right after that period of intense listening. Suddenly, things just start clicking into place. You have to trust the process.
I love that.
Yeah.
So here is our challenge to you for this week. Pick just one technique we talked about today. Just one. Maybe it's shadowing for 5 minutes while you do the dishes and really act it out. Scare the neighbors a little.
Do it. It's fun.
Or maybe it's downloading a spaced repetition app like Anki and putting 10 new words in it. Or maybe it's just giving yourself permission to read a chapter of a book in your target language without looking up every single word. Try it out. See how it feels.
And be kind to your brain. It's working a lot harder than you think.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.